A miniature village. A whale park whose jingle you can still sing. A futuristic island built for the whole world to see. The world's first hands-on science center. All beloved. All packed once. All gone. Or going right now. Here's what should bother you. Not one of them died loudly. No disaster, no scandal big enough to make the country stop. They just got quieter. The locals found other things to do on a Saturday, stopped mentioning the place, and slowly, without anyone actually deciding, stopped going back. By the time the gates closed for good, half the country assumed they already had. That's the quietest kind of loss there is, and Canada is weirdly good at it. 10 attractions millions of people loved and let slip away. Number 1 is still standing, which makes it the worst one of all. Number 10. Cullen Gardens and Miniature Village, Whitby, Ontario. We start small, literally. If you grew up in Durham region, east of Toronto, in the 80s or 90s, you know exactly what this was. Cullen Gardens and Miniature Village opened in May 1980, the project of a man named Len Cullen and his wife, Connie. The headline attraction was a sprawling miniature village, more than 160 tiny buildings, cottages, and homes, many of them scale models of real structures from across southern Ontario, with model trains threading between them and little radio-controlled boats puttering across the ponds. It became one of the biggest tourist draws east of Toronto. Buses full of garden clubs, school trips, couples on first dates wandering the floral displays. In the winter, the whole place lit up for a festival of lights. It was charming in a way that's almost impossible to manufacture on purpose. It was so quintessentially Ontario that in 1983, the Canadian series The Littlest Hobo filmed an episode there. If you went as a kid, you remember the scale of it backwards. You were the giant for once. You could lean down and look into the windows of houses smaller than your own shoe. Tiny streetlights, tiny laundry on tiny lines. A train that ran around the whole thing on a loop you could have followed all afternoon. It was the kind of place that didn't need to be loud to hold a child completely still. And for 25 years, that was enough. And then, the way it always seems to go on this list, the crowds got thinner. The town grew up around it. A subdivision went in across the road. The novelty of a miniature village, built before the internet, before every kid had a screen in their pocket, slowly stopped being enough. Rising costs met falling attendance, and that math only ever ends one way. On January 1st, 2006, after 25 years, Cullen Gardens and Miniature Village closed for good. Here's the part that lands like a punch. By his family's account, Len Cullen died of cancer that same August, the year the thing he had dreamed up and built with his own hands shut its gates. The village he'd spent decades on didn't get to outlive him by much. The little buildings didn't all die, at least. Some were sold off to the city of Oshawa, and a number of the models eventually made their way to the Niagara Parks Commission, where pieces of them have been displayed since. The land itself became Cullen Central Park, a quiet public green space owned by the town of Whitby. Walk through it today and you'd never know. There's no miniature village, there's no festival of lights. There's grass and trees and a creek, and a couple of remnants if you know where to look. A whole generation of Durham kids grew up there. Most of the kids being pushed in strollers through it now have no idea it was ever magic. That's the pattern. Hold on to it, because you're going to see it 9 more times. Number 9. Upper Clements Park, Annapolis County, Nova Scotia. Let's leave Ontario and go all the way to the Bay of Fundy, because the next one is a story about a government that decided to build a theme park. And what happens when a government decides to build a theme park? Upper Clements Park sat on about 26 hectares just outside Annapolis Royal in western Nova Scotia. It was built by the provincial government and opened in 1989 at a cost of roughly $23 million. $23 million. For a seasonal amusement park in a sparsely populated part of the province, a couple of hours from Halifax. And for a while, it worked, in the way these things work. There was a flume ride, a haunted house, and the crown jewel, one of the only wooden roller coasters in all of Canada, which is a genuinely rare thing in this country. For a generation of maritime kids, this was the trip. Families and school groups came from across Atlantic Canada. If you were a kid in Nova Scotia in the 90s, a day at Upper Clements was a big deal. But the attendance never quite covered what it cost to run the place. That was the problem from almost the very beginning. The province leased it out, at one point, for a few seasons in the mid-90s, to a business group from Hong Kong, and later to a local non-profit society that took it over and kept it limping forward on grants and goodwill and the labor of about 150 seasonal staff. It hung on for 30 years. And then, it just stopped. The park never reopened after the 2019 season, and the pandemic shutdown in 2020 turned a quiet decline into a permanent goodbye. In 2020, Annapolis County bought the site for $600,000, with a plan to turn it into a private boarding school. That plan collapsed. The Nova Scotia Supreme Court ruled the land transfer illegal in 2021. And then comes the detail that says everything. When the county put the old parkland out for redevelopment proposals in 2025, according to CBC reporting, it received exactly 0 official bids. Nobody wanted it. A $23 million dream, a wooden roller coaster, a generation of summers. And the land it sat on can't even give itself away. The flume is gone. The coaster is gone. What's left, by the accounts of people who've walked it recently, is a drained pond, some crumbling boardwalk, and caution tape. On to something a little more glamorous, and a lot more suspicious. Number 8. Belmont Park, Montreal, Quebec. Belmont Park ran along the Rivière des Prairies in the Cartierville district of Montreal from 1923 to 1983. 60 years. And it was beloved. Not in a polite, civic way, but in the way Montrealers love things, which is to say, completely and forever. Its signature ride was a wooden roller coaster called the Cyclone. Its mascot, in a way, was a giant animatronic woman, a papier-mâché figure whose recorded laugh rolled out over the midway and pulled people in off the street. There was a carousel, a Ferris wheel, a dance hall, a swimming pool. There was even a little detail of trivia that's almost too good. According to Héritage Montréal, the park's vice president in the 1930s was Charles-Émile Trudeau, the grandfather of a future prime minister. So this was not some struggling, forgotten attraction. People still loved it. Which is exactly what makes its ending so strange. Belmont Park closed permanently on October 13th, 1983. And here's where you have to be careful with the story, because the why has more than one answer. According to Wikipedia's account, the closure followed a police raid, one that may have been motivated by City Hall's displeasure that this private park was pulling business away from the city-owned La Ronde, the amusement park left over from Expo 67, which had opened in 1967. Héritage Montréal also points to a tragic accident in 1979 in which 2 children died, and to that same relentless competition from La Ronde as factors in the park's decline. Untangle all of that and you're left with something uncomfortable. People still wanted to go. The crowds hadn't fully vanished. And the park closed anyway, caught in the gears of municipal politics and commercial rivalry. There's one last image worth holding. In the summer of 1983, just before the end, the park became the stage for a strange little record attempt. According to Héritage Montréal, 2 young Montrealers rode the Cyclone for more than 500 hours straight, somewhere around 20 days without getting off. A few weeks after that final, absurd, joyful marathon on the old coaster, Belmont Park was finished. The Cyclone came down. The land was sold. Today, there are condominiums standing where the laughing woman used to call people in off the street. Now we go to the water, to a place where Canadians and Americans both came by the boatload, and where the most famous ride didn't die at all. It just left the country. Number 7. Crystal Beach Park, Fort Erie, Ontario. On the Canadian shore of Lake Erie, just across the water from Buffalo, there was a place that for 101 years was one of the finest amusement parks in North America. Not in Ontario, in North America. Crystal Beach Park opened in 1888, founded by a man named John E. Rebstock, and grew from a beachside collection of sideshows into a full-blown park by 1890. What made it special was the ferry. A passenger boat called the Canadiana ran across the lake from Buffalo, which meant that on a hot summer day, this stretch of Ontario shoreline filled up with people from both sides of the border. At its peak, in the 1940s and early 1950s, the park drew as many as 20,000 visitors a day. It had the rides to match. The Crystal Ballroom opened in 1925 and was billed as the largest dance hall in North America, with room for 3,000 dancers on its floor, a place where the big bands played to packed houses. The crowds got so intense that, according to historical accounts, when bandleader Artie Shaw showed up late for a Labor Day show in 1939, the crowd of 7,000 people actually rioted. And the coasters. Crystal Beach built its reputation on them. There was the Cyclone, opened in 1927, a ride so genuinely terrifying that, and here I have to flag this as the kind of story that gets told and retold about places like this. Legend has long held that the park kept a nurse stationed at the exit to revive riders who passed out. Treat that one as folklore. What's solid is that the Cyclone was eventually dismantled and its steel reused to build its successor in the late 1940s, the Comet, considered one of the greatest wooden roller coasters ever made. Then the decline. The same quiet erosion you've seen all the way down this list. And after the 1989 season, Crystal Beach Park closed forever, to what people who were there describe as a real collective sense of loss. The rides were auctioned off that October. Here is the gut punch ending. The Comet, the heart of the place, was bought, taken apart, trucked across the border, and rebuilt in Queensbury, New York, where it reopened in 1994 and where it still runs today, even earning landmark status from American coaster enthusiasts in 2009. The old Ferris wheel went to Centerville on the Toronto Islands. So if you're a former Crystal Beach kid who wants to ride the coaster of your childhood, you can. You just have to drive to another country to do it. As for the land where the park stood, it's been a gated residential community, the Crystal Beach Tennis and Yacht Club, since 1992. You can't even walk in without a pass. A place that once welcomed 20,000 people a day across an international border now has a fence and a gate, and most of the people behind it have no memory of the Midway at all. We're not done with the water. The next one is the longest freshwater beach on Earth, and it burned. Number 6. Wasaga Beach, Beach Area 1, Ontario. Wasaga Beach has a claim to fame that's hard to beat. It's the longest freshwater beach in the world. And for the better part of a century, the heart of it, the strip known as Beach Area 1, was the place to be. This goes back a long way. The first beachfront hotel, the Capstan Inn, opened in 1915. The Dardanella Dance Hall followed in 1918. Over the decades, the strip filled in with hotels, an amusement park called Playland, arcades, fry stands, souvenir shops, the whole loud, sticky, sunburned ecosystem of a Canadian beach town. During the Second World War, servicemen stationed nearby made Wasaga famous across the country. Generations of Ontario families have a photo from that strip somewhere in a shoebox. By the 1980s, some of the shine had come off. Playland closed in 1985, but the strip was still the strip. Still the place you walked at night. Still the heart of the town. And then, on the night of November 30th, 2007, it burned. A fire tore through Beach Area 1 and destroyed roughly 90% of the buildings along the strip. Many of those structures dated back to the 30s and 40s. Because it was late November, most of the businesses were closed for the winter and empty, so there were no reported injuries. But the heart of the beachfront was gone in a single night. 2 people were later arrested and charged with arson. Now here's where Wasaga earns its place on a list about places locals stopped going, because what happened next wasn't a rebuild. It was 18 years of nothing. Proposal after proposal failed. A massive development pitched at around $400 million fell apart. The town, population 24,862 as of the 2021 census, eventually bought up most of the beachfront properties itself in 2015 for nearly $14 million, just to take control of its own downtown. And then, it kept not happening. Plans came and went. The vacant lots stayed vacant. For nearly 2 decades, the most famous stretch of the longest freshwater beach in the world was functionally a hole in the ground with a view. It's only very recently, with demolition of the old ruins finally beginning in 2025 and new hotels and townhomes planned, that anything has actually moved. A whole generation of kids has now grown up in Wasaga Beach with no memory of the strip at all. To them, it was always empty. Always the spot where something used to be. The fire was one night. The shrug lasted almost 20 years. Now we leave the amusement parks behind for something stranger. A vision of the future that the future itself walked away from. Number 5. Man and His World / The Expo 67. Site, Montreal, Quebec. You have to understand how big this was to understand how quietly it ended. Expo 67 was the World's Fair held in Montreal for Canada's 100th birthday. It was, by a wide margin, the proudest moment of a generation of Canadians. Over 50 million visitors came through. Nearly 100 pavilions representing dozens of nations rose on islands in the St. Lawrence. Some of them built or expanded specifically for the fair. There was a monorail. There was Buckminster Fuller's enormous geodesic dome. There was the future, laid out on the water, and the whole country walked through it. The fair was meant to run 6 months, but it was so beloved that the city couldn't bear to let it die. So in 1968, much of the site reopened as a permanent summer exhibition called Man and His World, taking its name from the fair's own theme. And this is the part that should sit with you, because it's almost unbearably poetic. The pavilions of Expo 67 were never built to last. They were designed for a single 6-month summer, not for Montreal winters, not for years of weather. So as Man and His World limped on through the 70s and into the 80s, the buildings, the gleaming pavilions that had shown Canadians the future, literally began to rot and fall apart. It got worse. In 1975, fire claimed the Ontario Pavilion. In 1976, fire stripped the acrylic skin clean off Buckminster Fuller's iconic dome, leaving just the steel skeleton. As attendance fell year after year, less and less of the site stayed open, and what remained, by the accounts of the time, started to resemble the ruins of a futuristic city, a vision of tomorrow, abandoned and overgrown. The few remaining original exhibits closed permanently in 1984. Most of what was left was demolished over the following years. The story doesn't have a tragic ending, exactly, and that's almost the point. The islands became parkland, eventually renamed Parc Jean Drapeau. The bones of Fuller's dome were saved and now house an environmental museum called the Biosphere. Habitat 67, the famous stacked concrete apartments, is still lived in to this day. La Ronde, the amusement park, still runs. But the fair itself, the thing 50 million people came to see, the proudest single moment in modern Canadian memory, was allowed to quietly rot, burn, and be cleared away. And the country mostly just let it happen. We built the future, then we stopped maintaining it, watched it decay, and turned it into a nice place to walk the dog. If that one was a slow fade, the next one is the opposite. It's a closure so abrupt that people are still furious about it. Number 4. Marineland, Niagara Falls, Ontario. For more than 60 years, there was a sign you could not escape if you drove anywhere in southern Ontario. Everyone loves Marineland. It was on the radio. It was a jingle burned into the skull of every kid in the province. Marineland opened in 1961, the life's work of a Slovenian immigrant named John Holler, who started small and built it into the second most famous attraction in Niagara Falls, second only to the falls themselves. At its height, according to reporting from The Conversation, the park drew as many as 1.2 million visitors a year to its killer whale shows, its beluga whales, its dolphins, its roller coasters. For a certain generation, this was the big summer trip. And then the ground shifted underneath it. Not the economy this time, but the culture itself. Public attitudes toward keeping whales and dolphins in tanks turned, and turned hard. In 2019, Canada passed Bill S-203, nicknamed the Free Willy Bill, which banned the breeding and captivity of cetaceans for entertainment. And Marineland came under intense, sustained scrutiny. According to figures from Ontario's Animal Welfare Services reported by CBC, more than a dozen beluga whales died at the park from late 2019 onward, along with its orca, Kiska, who had become known as the last captive killer whale in Canada before her death in 2023. In 2021, the province declared the park's marine mammals to be in distress. It got legally serious. In 2024, Marineland was found guilty under Ontario's animal welfare law over the care of 3 young black bears, kept in enclosures inspectors found grossly inadequate. The park was fined. But the real story is the parking lot. Because the thing that actually killed Marineland wasn't a single scandal. It was that the public quietly, steadily, decided not to come anymore. As one advocate put it to a local outlet in 2024, that's why the parking lot was so empty. John Holler died in 2018. His widow, Marie, ran the park until her own death in September 2024. The park had already been scaled back to almost nothing, no rides, no animal shows, and after the summer of 2024, it closed to the public and did not reopen. What's left is a slow, sad unwinding. Recent reporting indicates the remaining animals are being moved out. The black bears sent to a sanctuary, the last few hundred deer being relocated, as the land itself heads toward redevelopment. There's a particular kind of sadness in that. Not the outrage of a scandal, though there was plenty of that. The quieter thing underneath it. The sound of a jingle that every kid in Ontario could once sing, playing to a parking lot with no cars in it. The whales outlasted the crowds. Then the crowds were gone, and the whales had to go too. Everyone loves Marineland. And then, one quiet season at a time, everyone stopped going. The last 3 on this list are different. These weren't regional parks or beach strips. These were institutions. And the way 2 of them are ending right now, in real time, ties this entire list together. Number 3. The Ontario Science Centre, Toronto. If you went to school anywhere near Toronto in the last 50 years, you went here. That's not an exaggeration. It's practically a rite of passage. The Ontario Science Centre opened in 1969, designed by the celebrated architect Raymond Moriyama, built into the side of a ravine in the Don Valley, and it has a real claim to make. It's widely described as the world's first interactive science center, the place that invented the idea of don't just look at it, touch it, push the button, make it do something. The static electricity ball that made your hair stand up, the paper making, the rainforest. Generations of Ontario kids had their first real spark of curiosity in that building. And then, on June 21st, 2024, the province closed it, with essentially a few hours' notice. The stated reason was the roof. An engineering report by a firm called Rimkus Consulting Group flagged certain lightweight concrete roof panels, a 1960s material known as RAAC, as being at risk of failure under heavy snow load. And on that basis, the building was shut immediately, permanently, fences going up the same day. But here is where it gets contentious, and you need both halves of this. According to later reporting, including reporting by Canadian Architect magazine cited by Wikipedia, drafts of that engineering report had actually recommended routine repairs, not a full closure, with only a tiny fraction of the roof at critical risk. The cost to fix it was estimated at somewhere between $22 and $40 million. Private donors, including the Nobel-winning AI pioneer Geoffrey Hinton, reportedly offered up to $1 million toward repairs. The architecture firm founded by the building's original designer offered to consult for free. The province declined. More than 95,000 people signed a petition to save it. And the kicker? The detail that turns this from a sad story into an infuriating one for a lot of Torontonians is where the Science Centre is going. The province's plan is to relocate it to the grounds of Ontario Place. We'll get there. But first you need to know that in December 2024, Ontario's Auditor General questioned the whole financial logic, finding that the costs of the relocation had already climbed to roughly $400 million, more than the savings the move was supposed to deliver. A building designed specifically to teach children curiosity was closed by a memo most of those children never got to read. Remember that as we count down the last two, because they're connected. Number 2. Ontario Place, Toronto. This is the one Torontonians can't let go of, and after you hear it, you'll understand why. Ontario Place opened on May 22, 1971, built on artificial islands off the Toronto waterfront. It was a genuine vision of the future, designed by architect Eberhard Zeidler, with landscape work by Michael Huff, all steel and glass and pods suspended over the lagoons. Its centerpiece was the Cinesphere, that great geodesic dome, home to the world's first permanent IMAX theater. There were water slides, a children's village, outdoor concerts. For a Toronto kid, this was summer. And in the beginning, it was packed. In the 1970s, Ontario Place drew around 3 million visitors a year. Then watch the slide, because the numbers tell the whole story on their own. According to figures compiled on the park's history, attendance fell to about 2.1 million by 1989, down to roughly 1 million by the mid-2000s. And in its final operating season, the park that once pulled 3 million people brought in around 563,000. The province closed the main park for redevelopment, and by 2012, the Ontario Place you grew up with was finished. It hasn't sat entirely empty. Trillium Park opened on part of the site in 2017, and the Cinesphere was restored to show films again. But the fight over what comes next is where this turns into something that genuinely enrages people. Because the redevelopment plan centers on handing a chunk of this public waterfront to a private spa company based in Austria, a firm called Therme. And when that plan became clear, the backlash, as Toronto Life reported, was instant and fierce. The protests laid bare just how deeply this city is still attached to the place, even years after it stopped going. That's the quiet tragedy of Ontario Place. It didn't close because Torontonians stopped loving it. The attendance numbers fell for all the ordinary reasons. More things to do, an aging park, a city that moved on a little each summer. But the love never went anywhere. People just stopped showing up, assumed it would always be there, and then woke up to find out it was being handed to a foreign spa company. A vision of the public future, becoming a fight over who gets to own the lake. And now the last one. Except it isn't really a 10th place at all. It's where this whole list has been heading. Number 1. The island where they're burying them together. Go back to number 3 and number 2 for a second. Because here's the thing I held back. The Ontario Science Centre, the world's first interactive science centre, The building shut with a few hours' notice over a roof its own engineers reportedly said could be repaired is being relocated. And the place it's being relocated to is Ontario Place. The shuttered science institution is being moved onto the shuttered waterfront park, on the same islands where the public future was supposed to live, to clear room, ultimately, for that private spa. Two of the most beloved public institutions in the province, both closed, both fought over, both stacked onto the same patch of land off the Toronto shoreline. And according to Ontario's own Auditor General, the relocation costs had already blown past the savings it was meant to create, climbing toward $400 million by late 2024. Sit with the shape of that. This isn't a building that burned down in the night like Wasaga. It isn't a wooden coaster auctioned off and trucked to New York like Crystal Beach. It isn't a vision of the future left to quietly rot on an island like Expo. It's all of those instincts at once, happening right now, in real time, to two places that millions of Ontarians can still picture with their eyes closed. And that's the through line. That's the thing every single one of these places shares. None of them ended with a bang. Cullen Gardens, the miniature village a generation grew up in, closed on a quiet New Year's Day. Upper Clements, a province's $23 million dream, so unwanted now that nobody will even bid on the land. Belmont Park, still loved when the police walked in. Crystal Beach, 20,000 people a day, now a gated lot you can't enter. Wasaga's famous strip, a hole in the ground for almost 20 years. Expo's future, left to rust. Marineland's empty parking lot. The Science Center, fenced off in an afternoon. Ontario Place, sold to a spa. Every one of them was closed carefully, quietly. With the paperwork in order and the chairs folded up and the lights turned off, and a general national hope that nobody would ask too many follow-up questions. That's the most Canadian thing of all. Not the disaster, the shrug. The quiet agreement to stop looking at the thing we used to love, and to never quite admit out loud that it's gone. So here's the part where I hand it back to you. You already have a number 11. The place from the start of this video, the one you pictured before I'd named a single name. The drive-in, the water park, the roadside zoo, the lookout tower, the diner, the mini golf. The place you assumed would always be there. Go check if it's still open. Not someday, this week. Because the lesson of all 10 of these places isn't that they closed. It's that they closed while everyone was still pretty sure they hadn't. The locals didn't say goodbye. They just stopped going, one ordinary Saturday at a time. And by the time anyone thought to look back, there was nothing left to look back at. Don't let your number 11 become a number on somebody else's list. If a place on this list was your place, tell me which one in the comments. I read them. And I'd genuinely like to know what it was like before the shrug.